Hi, my name is Dr.
Gaukhar Baidildinova.
This video is a part of my lectures on evidence-based medicine and epidemiology. In this lecture, we decompose the anatomy of a scientific article. The structure of a scientific article is usually denoted by the acronym IMRAD: Introduction, Methods, Results, and Discussion. But in reality, the structure is a bit more detailed. Each article also has a title, abstract, and reference list. If I further elaborate, then, of course, there is a list of authors, contacts of corresponding author, authors' affiliations, meaning where they work or study. Sometimes, the article can have a graphical abstract and key points or highlights. It all starts with the title. The article's title is like bait. It's the first thing that grabs your attention. The title of a scientific article should be clear, concise, and informative, accurately reflecting the study's content. It should include key terms relevant to the research and, if possible, indicate the main findings or focus. In contrast to literature books, titles of scientific articles are usually long and quite detailed, aiming to convey the main topic of the article as detailed as possible. Once you're intrigued by the title, you move on to read the abstract. The abstract should give you a brief overview of the problem, the methods used, the main findings, and the most important conclusion, the so-called take-home message. If the abstract is compelling, you'll be motivated to read the entire article. The article's structure follows the hourglass principle, which is similar to the structure recommended for writing IELTS or basically any essay. This means the introduction starts broad and becomes more specific as it narrows down to the research question and then broadens again in the discussion, where the implications of the results are considered. Introduction. After the abstract, you dive into the introduction. In this section, the authors define the area of research, where their work fits within the broader field of scientific knowledge, and they reference other significant studies. The introduction sets the context by showing what has already been discovered and what remains unknown. The funnel narrows as the authors lead you to the specific problem they are addressing. This section often mentions gaps in existing research or unresolved questions. You might read statements like, Group A discovered X, but we found a contradiction. There is a gap in knowledge about why we decided to continue exploring Z based on the work of previous researchers. Then, the authors present the main objective of the article, which will outline the research study and its key findings. The introduction often serves as a brief literature review, where the authors review relevant studies related to their own research. Next, the article moves into the material and methods section. Here, the authors explain how the experiments were carried out. What was the object of study? Cells, mice, humans, etc. What were the conditions of the experiments? What equipment and software were used? What type of statistical analysis was applied? This section should provide enough detail so that someone else could replicate the experiment based on the description. Results. After the methods, we move to the results section, where the authors describe what was discovered. This is typically presented in the form of tables, graphs, and charts. The results are factual and free of interpretation at this stage. Discussion. The article then transitions into the discussion section. This is where the authors interpret their findings, discuss what these results mean in the context of existing scientific knowledge, and compare their work with previous studies. The discussion follows the reverse structure of the introduction. The authors first review the results and reflect on their significance. They may also present their own conclusions or hypotheses. They evaluate the results by comparing them with earlier publications. Does the current study confirm or contradict what others have found? If the results don't align with previous studies, the authors will suggest possible explanations, such as differences in methodology or sample size. The authors may also point out limitations, flaws in their study, or areas where future research is needed. This is a valuable aspect that encourages critical thinking. Conclusion. The conclusion section may be part of the discussion or a separate section entirely. It often includes a summary of the findings, followed by statements like, more research is needed, or future studies should include larger sample sizes. This is a classic ending in many scientific papers. The article concludes with the references, which list all the work cited throughout the article. I also have 2 paid courses on Udemy. The Critical Assessment of Clinical Studies teaches how to read and critically evaluate clinical studies. It's a very great course. the same as my second course, Scientific Writing, where I tell all the nuances of how to write a scientific article or dissertation. Links are in the description box. Let's now look at a simple example. Title: Are all apples red? Author: Ida Cortland. Abstract: We examined several apples' color. Although most are red, some are not. Introduction: An age-old question is, are all apples red? McIntosh 93 thought so. Smith 99 begs to differ. We hope to resolve this issue once and for all. Methods: We went to the local grocery store and bought one of every apple they had. We took them home and looked at them. Results: We found 4 red apples, 1 green apple, and 2 yellow apples. As shown in the graph below, these results support our hypothesis. Discussion: Since we found 1 yellow apple and 2 green apples, it must be true that not all apples are red. We concur with Smith's findings. References: McIntosh 93 and Smith 99. Real articles also include several other small sections that I wanted to enlighten. Acknowledgements: A section where the authors thank individuals, organizations, or institutions that contributed to the research or provided support but are not listed as co-authors, usually for provided funding, reagents, or consultations. Funding: A declaration of financial support for the research, including grants, sponsorships, or any other financial backing. Availability of data and materials: Information about where the data and materials used in the study can be accessed by others. Authorship contributions: A description of each author's role and specific contributions to the study, ensuring transparency in the authorship process. Conflict of interest disclosure: A statement revealing any potential financial or personal conflicts that could influence the research or its interpretation. Consent for publication: Confirmation that individuals whose personal data or identifiable information is included in the study have given their consent to be published. Not applicable for non-clinical trials. Ethics approval and consent to participate: A statement confirming that the research was conducted according to ethical guidelines and that participants provided informed consent. Informed consent relates to humans. Supplementary material: Additional data, figures, or information that supports the main article but is not essential to the main text, often provided as separate files. That's the official definition, but, in fact, there are plenty of interesting and important stuff that is placed here just because of word limitations for articles. I often find exact numbers in long tables that are provided as supplementary material. I strongly recommend always downloading and checking it.